Forced to work from home by your employer? Laid off or feeling depressed at home? Do you want to make money working from anywhere? We'll show you how to do it from your couch. It's time for another episode of the Work From Home Show. Coming to you from their homes in Austin, Texas and Tampa, Florida, here are your hosts, Adam and Naresh.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Work From Home Show. I'm Naresh Vissa with Adam Schrader. Shout out to all our homies, homeboys, homegirls, home trans, all the work from homers out there. Today we have Joe Saul-Sehy on the show. He is host of one of the most popular financial podcasts on the internet called the Stacking Benjamins podcast. And he's co-author of the new book, Stack, Your Super Serious Guide to Modern Money Management. We highly recommend not just our podcast, which our loyal listeners listen to, but we also recommend the Stacking Benjamins podcast. Joe's going to talk a little bit about that, why he got started, as well as his new book. So, Joe, thanks for joining us on the Work From Home Show.
Naresh and Adam, thanks so much for having me. I can't wait to dig in with your squad, with the people that listen.
Yeah, we call them homies because they're work from homers. Yeah, they're our homies.
Duh, of course you do.
Let's start with the Stacking Benjamins podcast. Tell us a little bit about the show. What topics do you guys cover? How did you grow it to become one of the most listened to podcasts on the internet? Probably a top 5 most listened to financial podcasts. And did you get started on it from home? It looks like we can see your video. It looks like you're working from home.
I actually work our shows live from my mom's basement. So this is mom's basement. And and we kind of acknowledge what everybody knows, which is that most podcasters are working in mom's basement and they try to pretend that they're not. So we thought we'd just own it, you know? And plus, being a personal finance podcast, how frugal is it to work with rent free? If you can pay no rent and get away with it, that's a fantastic way to work from home. But very seriously, we've been podcasting for almost 10 years. And the idea for the podcast initially, I had done public relations for American Express, the financial advisor division of American Express and Ameriprise for about a decade. And when I stopped doing that at age 40 and actually sold my franchise, sold my financial planning business, I had a lot of people tell me, because I was listening to podcasts in the early days, that I should have one. And I kept telling them, I got nothing to say that Dave Ramsey or Susie Orman, a couple of the big names out there, Kramer, that they're not saying. And I don't want to, scream, sell, sell, sell like Kramer does. And I don't want to yell at people about their money. I mean, no offense to Dave Ramsey or Susie Orman, but I didn't want to be kind of the moralistic backstop on money, where I'm judging you, whether you're doing well or not. And so I kept telling them, no, I got nothing to say. And I think that's the key to anybody working from in any business, is to look and see, what does the lay of the land look like? Like, know what people aren't doing. And often you can do something from this book that I read quite a while ago. And I love this author and I feel thrilled. We've had him on our show a couple times, a guy named Austin Kleon. He wrote a book called Steal Like an Artist. And one of the best things to do is to riff off of what somebody's doing in a different area. And so I'm mowing my lawn one day and I've, got the headphones in and I'm listening to on National Public Radio, these guys Click and Clack. And the show.
Yes, Click and Clack.
Yeah, Car Talk. So for people that don't know Car Talk, it's these two guys that answer people's questions about cars. And it isn't really about learning about a car. It's more about car culture. And I realized I'm having a blast. I'm not learning a ton. I mean, I'm learning some stuff, but it's mostly through osmosis and the fact that I like it and I'm becoming interested in it instead of being yelled at. There's no shame. People are calling in going, my car's making this noise. Like, how do I fix that? People unabashedly don't know much about cars that listen to the show. And I thought, what a wonderful way to teach people about money. So we decided, having the show in mom's basement and making it, instead of the last last word in personal finance, a place where we shine a light on good ideas that other people have. And we'll often try to present 3 or 4 different ideas per show, make it collaborative, involve the audience as much as we can, and really just try to make it a place much like Car Talk where you just have some fun with it. And that was kind of the differentiator at the start with Stacking Benjamins.
So you say you've been doing this for, about 10 years. Has financial advice changed much? Has your money management advice changed much over that time?
You know what's funny, Adam, is that the tools that you use have morphed, but the advice is still the same. I mean, the basics are still the basics. And I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. Modern money often now involves cryptocurrencies, right? I mean, 10 years ago.
I was just about to say that. I was going to say, is cryptocurrency still a part of the basics?
Yeah, well, what's funny is how you think about crypto, I think, is a basic, and also the idea of meme stocks. But talking about crypto as an example, if you want to be safe, if you need safety with your money, crypto is a horrible place to be. It's the Wild West. Government's just beginning to be involved. El Salvador just recently became, I think, the first government to embrace crypto as a national currency. And on the other side, you've got China getting involved. The United States, by the way, on our end, we can't figure it out. The Securities and Exchange Commission has said that it's not an investment, so they won't regulate it. The IRS has said, well, it's not legal tender, and there's a capital. If you sell some crypto to buy a sandwich, we're going to charge you capital gains tax, so it's not legal tender. So if it's not an investment and it's not money, what the hell is it? Well, we all know the U.S. is going to at some point rule on it and decide what it is. So there's a bunch of stuff still coming. So if you want to be safe, like if it's grandma's money or if it's your emergency fund, you don't want to use it. That stuff is the basics that we've taught, since I became a financial planner in the early 90s. But what is also the same, but is exciting with crypto is knowing that it's the Wild West. You know where you make big money? Wherever the Wild West is. And by the way, big money also means the opportunity to lose lots of money. So I think the crypto game is for people that don't want to turn $500 into $550 or $600. It's for people that want to turn $500 into $500,000. And certainly when you look at that, a basic we've always had is always do that with money that you can afford to lose. Dollar cost average in, right? Take a little bit of money from your paycheck every month and put that money in, or money that you set aside, put a little bit in at a time. Don't bet the farm all at one time. So the basics of how you do it are the same. But Adam, to your question, the tools now are morphing. Plus a lot of the cool tools we have online in fintech, a lot of the apps that gamify things and make it easier for you to save money. That game's also changing, but still around the idea of tricking yourself to save money has been a basic of what we've talked about, since I've been a financial planner.
A couple of things. Number one, with crypto, for the first time, I felt recently, I actually went on another podcast as a guest, and they asked me, let's say you have X amount of dollars sitting around, and we had just had a big conversation about inflation and how it's transitory, maybe it's not transitory, but let's say you have X amount of dollars sitting around. You're obviously not going to leave it in your bank account or the CD that's paying 0.8% if you're lucky. Where are you going to put it right now today? And I walked through that problem and said, well, stocks, they just reached all-time highs, and I'm not so confident in the short term about stocks. Maybe a little bit in stocks. We walked through real estate, which Adam and I are both real estate investors. And I walked through that and said, look, 2 years ago, real estate, absolutely amazing time to get in. 2 years ago and before, but really since August, September of last year, real estate has skyrocketed to the point where right now you're not going to get that cash flow. Who knows if it's going to keep appreciating at this pace. So I wasn't as bullish on real estate either. And I said, well, what's left? Bonds, you're not getting much yield there. Treasuries, obviously nothing there.
Yeah.
So I said, what's left? And I said, it's a no-brainer, I think, to put that money into cryptocurrency. And this is when Bitcoin was at about 29,000. And so I said, if I were to put my money somewhere today, I would actually put it all into cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, Ethereum, even Ethereum more than Bitcoin, because I like that technology better. And look, I'm not trying to toot my horn and say I was right and now Bitcoin is at 50,000 or so, but it just made sense to me because I think this is how a lot of investors are thinking. They're thinking, okay, traditionally it's stocks. We'll look at where stocks are. Then it's real estate. Then it's this asset class and this asset class. All right, what's left? All right, let's just go into crypto.
Yeah, I think that crypto, the utility of crypto is coming. I think that the utility of NFTs, I think, is also something that you can talk about and where that's headed. I certainly think buying janky, 8-bit art, that's going to kind of be the Beanie Baby of NFTs. But I do think that NFTs in the future, you look at the music industry and how the music industry blew itself up back before NFTs, and how NFTs could have saved music, because now, musicians and artists get paid next to nothing but by streaming services. And if you could have taken an album and given somebody the digital right to it, the recording industry would have had no problem with that. Artists would have been better paid, and it would have been exciting. So I'm with you there. But the only place, Naresh, that I will push back on you is just in two things that I do think it's a little bit of an apple and an orange. I think you were right on talking about the place to put money, but I still wouldn't discount real estate or stocks. Historically, over long periods of time, those are the two asset classes that have reliably kicked inflation's butt, right? And that's kind of the game. The game is, how can we most reliably get the ship from point A to point B? I don't think I'm with you on crypto. I just don't know that the reliability is there. I know that when it comes to real estate, I'm totally with you. When people are paying $40,000 over asking, not even asking price, people are paying $40,000 over the appraisal, right? And doing it without any oh my goodness, I'm losing the term. What's the term where you bring the inspection? Thank you. People are waiving the inspection, which is just
everything.
Nuts. I know. How do you waive all this stuff and you waive the appraisal? Like, forget, I'll pay $40,000 more than that. That is bubble territory. But I think with real estate, I think you have to then widen your view a little bit and think about real estate as a series of a bunch of little markets, and what are the markets of the future, and are there deals there? Or build up your war chest to buy real estate in the future, because real estate, as you guys already know, as real estate investors, is clockwork. With stocks are also interesting, because stocks in an average year, stocks will hit an all-time high about 100 days of a 365-day year on average. So one out of every 3.6 days should be, or 3.6 days should be a high. So stocks at all-time highs. I've been in finance for nearly 30 years now. And you know what? Stocks are always at a high. Like, I can think of very few times, 2007, 2008, 2000, 2001, where people weren't cautioning about stocks at a high. So I think stocks, you just got to go, yeah, stocks are at a high. That's what they're supposed to do. And you dollar cost average in. Real estate, I think you got to get more granular and really look at what markets am I buying in? Where are those opportunities? Places like, as an example, Detroit, right? Where I'm from. I know some real estate investors in Detroit where it's still it's a block by block game now, where in one block it's overvalued. 2 blocks down is kind of the frontier where you're seeing a lot of housing development happen. And then 3 blocks from that is a place that developers still haven't touched yet. And these neighborhoods haven't experienced this rebirth. So I don't know. I think there's still some exciting opportunities out there.
Yeah, well, I didn't say never buy stocks again, never buy real estate again. Instead, it was, what would you do with your money right now today? Yeah. And in the case of real estate, I think rents, it's not that I think, rents have been going up quite precipitously over the last year. And I think they're going to continue to go up. So, and I do believe that asset prices in real estate are going to level off. And they already are leveling off in some markets, not in my market of Florida, not in Adam's market of Austin, Texas, but I do think that they will level off and not go down, but just level off, and then rents are going to rise. So that makes the cash flow better from an investment perspective if you're getting more rent as prices level off. And then in the case of stocks, I just think there's going to be a correction, not a crash, but every stock market goes through a correction every 4 to 5 months or so. So I said, look, wait for that correction, and that would be a good time to get into some nice dividend yielding stocks.
It's some deals.
But in the case of cryptocurrency and tying it into work from home, I don't know if you've been following it or following the whole work from home movement, but there are so many people, as we know, there's a labor shortage. There are a lot of people who can work but are choosing not to work or choosing to be self-employed. And many of these people have quit their jobs to literally download Robinhood. You talked about some of the new technologies and softwares out there, meme stocks, to download Robinhood and buy cryptocurrency. They're not even buying the actual coins themselves, because in Robinhood, you're buying the idea of the coin, not the coin itself. And they made their decision. These millennials mostly said, you know what, I'm just going to stay at home, live my millennial life, and just watch Bitcoin go up. And when the pandemic started, I believe Bitcoin was somewhere between $12,000 to $13,000. And now it's close to $50,000. So it's like, all right, well, I'm just gonna work from home, work on those passion projects, buy some crypto, use any stimulus money to put it back into crypto, and that's become somewhat of a new work from home moneymaker.
I think it's great. And you know what? I also think that that the number of people that have learned that instead of making money for somebody else, right? When I go to an employer, I bring these ideas, I bring these this expertise, I bring whatever I'm giving, I bring my hustle, and I'm gifting part of that to somebody else. And the ability to now work for yourself and trim away that middleman, that boss, and be your own boss is so awesome. I mean, and I'm a guy that has always believed that I'd rather work 65 hours. I work 65 hours a week to avoid working 40 hours for somebody else, right? I work way more hours to do my own thing to avoid having. I'm a horrible employee. I'm a great partner, and I work with partners all the time, but somebody else in my way when I really should be just trying to impress my client drives me absolutely crazy. There's a guy in real estate that you guys probably know, Robert Allen, who has a great old quote, I believe, from the 90s that says there's two doors in life. One door is opportunity and the other door is security. And whoever chases the door that says security gets neither. And I've always thought that is a really powerful thing. And in my experience, when I was working with clients, that was always true. I had people walking into my office all the time saying, unexpectedly, the company let me go. You know, the company no longer needs me. And I work for 30 years and it's like I just got cast off and my whole life means nothing anymore. Man, and that was horrible to sit across the table from some of these people. The security door, I think, you know, the video game Portal where the cake is a lie. I think the security is a lie.
So tell us a little bit, you know, you mentioned working in an office and now working for yourself. Tell us a little bit about your transition when you decided it was time to go from, you know, just somebody who works for a company to somebody who's working for yourself and finding clients. And I can't agree with you more about that, you know, going and working for yourself and getting, you know, 50 clients or 10 clients as opposed to just having your one client who's your job who can fire you and suddenly, you know, 3 months later, you might be out on the street if you don't have your situation set up right.
Right. No, I totally believe it. And Adam, what happened with me was, so I was in this hybrid model. I had a franchise with American Express, my financial planning company. I managed about $60 million, but I had to follow all these specific rules. So I had a mentor within American Express. You know, as a franchise, you got to do X, Y, Z that they say. And he was that guy. But he also This guy was amazing at his job, and he was very collaborative, and I learned a ton from him. When I was about to turn 40, I was 39. I got, like a lot of people, I got this note from him, and it was his 2 weeks notice. And let's be clear, the industry, the financial industry that I worked in and the place that I worked was not a place where you gave 2 weeks notice. If people have seen the movie Jerry Maguire, it's the type of job where you take the files at midnight, and then at 6 a.m. everybody on both sides are calling the clients to see who gets them, right? That's the type of business it was. So Chris writing this letter was remarkable in itself, but what he said was even more remarkable. He said that I like financial planning. I don't love it. I like this organization. I've been lucky to save a bunch of money, but once again, I really feel like if I can only live one time, I'm wasting my time if I'm not chasing that thing that is really me. And the bad news for me is I'm putting so much time into helping other people do what they want to do. I don't really know what I want. And he said, and this was a direct quote, I think I have other mountains to climb. And that hit me really hard, and it hit a bunch of us who were kind of mentees of Chris's hard. And by the way, and just for illustration, Chris was also younger than me. I think Chris was 35 or 36 at the time that he did this. And I remember just looking around my office going, yeah, I like my clients. I like, American Express. I like this stuff, but I don't love it. And if I'm turning 40, what do I really, really want to be? What do I want to do? And I realized then that my business had some value, had some economic value. I could sell the franchise, and I could use that to propel me into a new career. So I decided initially that I wanted to go work for somebody else, which, by the way, didn't work out. I wanted to be a high school teacher and a track coach, because those jobs don't pay well, but they pay very much in
natural progression.
Yeah. Working with your soul, though. I wanted to go from this kind of what I saw as kind of a soulless thing to this really soulful place where I'm helping kids, and super excited to get into that. Well, so I sold my business. I went into that, and I was bored, and I found out that I'd be fighting administration. Once again, I'd be fighting new bosses instead of teaching kids. And at the same time, because of my PR experience, I was working with a few of my old friends. I was writing their newsletters because I was a writing major in college. And so I was writing that, and I was using my PR experience to coach people about how to do on-screen interviews and those types of things, and making more money in shorts and a t-shirt than I would make if I was a first-year teacher, which, by the way, great for – I love teachers, but you're all so underpaid. And here I am, relaxed, doing what I kind of love. At the same time, by the way, I checked in with my buddy Chris, who said I have mountains to climb. When Chris left American Express, it wasn't hyperbole. He actually climbed most of the high peaks around the world. He climbed Everest twice. He's climbed Denali. He attempted K2, but another group was having problems, and it turned into a rescue mission where he went over and helped rescue these people that were dying on the mountain. He's climbed almost every big peak, and he runs an adventure travel company. He owns an adventure travel company in Colorado. So this guy now is doing exactly what he loves. And what I realized in my shorts and t-shirt that I needed to do that too. So I started up a blog. The blog finally became a podcast. The podcast did okay at first, but through, listening and a lot of the things that everybody from home should do, pivoting and listening and pivot and listen and pivot and listen to your audience, we finally had this hockey stick about 3.5 years in, where the show really took off and the awards started coming, and it really, really became, it was already gratifying, but it became even more so.
I think one of the good stories that you just told us has to do with the idea that people think, oh, this idea is already out there. Someone's already doing this. And what I've learned is that's not entirely true. If you take real estate investing, for example, you can easily say, oh, there are already so many real estate investors out there. This is not for me. Like, why would I get into it? There's nothing new and novel about it. I'm late to the game. But I've actually learned that copying others and tweaking things and doing things your own way is actually a better strategy than trying to come out with the next Facebook or the next Amazon. And to give another example in the media space, you brought up Jim Cramer and Susie Orman and all these people, but it's not just about the content that they're spitting out. It's the, who's delivering that content, because a lot of the people listening to those personalities, they might like the personality better than they like the actual content. At the end of the day, the content's all the same. And so in your case, I would say, just looking at you're younger than Dave Ramsey and Susie Orman. Maybe that helps.
Are better looking.
Maybe that helps attract a different generation. If a listener right now is a person of color, that's certainly going to attract a different audience. I think about someone like Candace Owens, who's big in the conservative space. She's African American. She says the same things that someone like Rush Limbaugh used to say, like the same talking points, the same sound bites, but she's an African American woman, and she's built a brand around that, saying the same old stuff that's been recycled and manufactured for the last 100 years. So this idea of becoming discouraged because, Jim Cramer's already doing it on CNBC, so I'm not even going to do it, I think that's not very valid. And then on top of that, you got started when podcasting wasn't really a thing. I don't think Jim Cramer and Susie Orman and all these people, they had their TV shows on CNBC,
and
but
nice
they didn't
buttons.
have the podcast. They didn't have and that's a different audience too.
We thought we were late, by the way. At that point, we thought we were really late. And the bad news is, too, Naresh, to your point, you hit the nail on the head. People aren't even here today listening because of me. They're here because of you guys, right? And they like you interacting with other people and how you do things. And so bringing yourself to anything is the key. I mean, people, if they heard our show, they would never know that we based it on Car Talk. Like, you don't hear our show and you hear Car Talk, and yet we were riffing off of Car Talk when we started. Other things about our show, we have a hidden track at the end of every show because I like the old albums that would often have that hidden track at the end of the record, and you think it's done and they start going again. I was actually listening to an Xbox podcast, Major Nelson podcast, and I one day heard that they had a hidden track. They don't do it anymore, but they did back when I was listening to it. And I thought that was really cool. So we quote stole that. But to your point, people don't get you. They don't get your experience. And I think another thing too for us, because, to your point about people with color, I'm a middle-aged white guy. My co-host is a middle-aged white guy. We certainly have a lens about the way that we view the world. Yet our show is a mass market show, and we bring on lots of different people. And it's very important for us as people with a growth mentality and learning to surround ourselves with people, not just that we work with, but also people that we have as guests on our show. Our show is incredibly diverse, and not because I'm doing some check boxes, but because of the fact that, number one, people need an entry point to whatever your brand is and what you're trying to build. And if I look different than you, if I sound different than you, your entry point is not going to be as easy as it is if I have somebody on who does that. And then the second thing is, the writing of the show. Like the ages on our team, we have a 6-person team, are all over the place, and we're equally split, 50% men, 50%, 3 men, 3 women. So our show tries to be incredibly diverse, and I think that surrounding yourself with all these different people makes you more creative and also pushes you to see things from a different lens, which is only going to help. I feel like lately, also to your point, when you talk about politics, so many people are dug in, and it takes somebody like a Candace, who, heck, I've noticed her, you're like, what is she saying? She's not saying the thing that I expected her to say. If you're gonna cut through the noise, that you better have a growth mentality instead of digging in and saying, no, my way's right. I love to be challenged, and I think that it only helps you grow and become a better brand and better at what you do.
Yeah, and also in today's environment, I mean, it's never been cheaper to try that sort of stuff. You can try it. I mean, like you said, right now you're in your mom's basement. You're not in some production studio you had to rent out at a radio station or, TV station or something like that. It's never been cheaper to try. So it's one of those things you might be saying to yourself, oh, well, this person is already doing it. How could I do it? Well, maybe you can't. Who knows? But you won't know until you go out there and give it a shot. You never know. And in today's world, I mean, you can start a podcast with, what, 50, $100, something like that, and get everything done.
You could download Robinhood for free and buy crypto for $1.
Yeah. Yeah. No, right. Put your podcast on Anchor by Robinhood. Like you're right. The barrier to entry, Adam, to trying stuff is and checking to see if you even have an audience is the cost is so low, which by the way, also brings up, I love this book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And by the way,
covered it. We've had like 4 different episodes on it. It's changed my life.
Well, what's funny, Naresh, is that when I read it, I didn't think it changed my life, right? And yet, to your point, I keep coming back to it. Like those lessons that you guys have talked about here, I keep coming back to those same lessons. But the rule that when you pick up one end of the stick, you also pick up the other end of the stick. So you got to think about if something has an upside, like as an example, we were talking about crypto, the upside, it comes with the downside. You could lose everything. But on the other side, if you're going to make money, you have to be willing to do that. So when it comes to low barrier of entry, that also means there's going to be more competition than in other places. I used to tell when pre-internet, when clients would come to me, they'd say, hey, there's this great thing. This friend of mine came to me and they said it's a different way of distributing products. And so if I sell this thing, I'll get a discount. And then if I get 3 of my friends to sell it as well, like they'll get discounts. And then, before I know it, I'm making all this money. Of course, multi-level marketing, which has been around forever and still around today. The reason multi-level marketing is successful is because it's a low barrier of entry business. And by successful, I don't mean the average person doing it. Very few people are successful. These companies,
Facebook.
Yeah, right. These companies are hugely successful because they get other people. They continually have this marketing churn. So, if you're going to go into podcasting, you have to know, Adam, to your point also, that the fee to try is very low, but finding your audience is going to take some hustle and some perseverance, and you're going to have to pivot. You're going to have to work because everybody and their brother could do this thing.
I've got to ask because we're not original OGs listeners of your show. Now, you said that you live with your mother or in your mother's basement. Tell us, have you always lived in I see a wedding ring on your hand as well. So have you always lived in your mother's basement or just taken care of her temporarily? What's the story behind that?
So we don't live in mom's basement. We only podcast in mom's basement. So that's clear.
Gotcha.
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
So she lives close by.
Absolutely. Yep. And mom has been great about letting her turn it into a studio and guests come down to the rickety card table and chat business with me.
And where do you live?
Well, and here's what I'll do, Naresh, is that we'll do something that we promised our listeners that we'd never do. We'll show you kind of behind the curtain. My mom lives in Cleveland, Ohio, and I'm in Texarkana, Texas. But what I really like, I love a podcast that has the sense of place and that is comfortable and is a thing that and is a specific place where our listeners can envision them to be. So to your point, that's not really mom's basement. This is meant to replicate mom's basement, and it's meant for our listeners to have a safe place to talk about money. But that's all a part of the game.
And there goes the fourth wall.
And there it went. Yep. Naresh tears it down.
So speaking about staying on the topic of parents and kids, you have an article on your website talking about money and kids and about how parents can shape their kids' financial future and set them up for success. Now, it's something that, hopefully every parent's trying to do, But what are some of the things that parents can do to set their kids up for success in life financially, and not just give them a bunch of money?
Yeah, no, I think there's three things. I think number one, to your point with giving your kids money, I actually think you should give kids money, but there's a second half of that people get wrong. My problem was when I went to college, I was never trusted with $10 or $20 at a time. My parents, like most parents, don't want to see their kids fail with money. So I was never allowed to make those dumbass decisions with $20. And so I got to college, and the first week of college, I signed up for a credit card. Of course, it was the American Express card, and I went on to be a spokesperson for that company, which is pretty funny because I don't think they did their homework when they had me be a spokesperson. I'm like, you wouldn't even trust it. I had my card taken away because I was so bad with money when I first got it. But I think we need to be willing to see our kids fail. We got to be okay with seeing them fail with a little bit of money. So I love this idea of an allowance. I love the allowance being a little bit bigger than mom or dad think maybe that it should be. And I like having a front row seat to watching your kid buy something stupid and then having the resilience to go back to your child maybe 2 weeks later and say, hey, how did that work out? When you damn well knew it didn't work out. You knew that it was a horrible decision, but being able to trust them with a little money, have them make the bad decision, but we're all going to make bad decisions. Let's get them out of the way quickly and with very little money. So I think that's number one. Number two is education, which means involving them in discussions. You don't want to scare your kids if things are really bad, but if you're just talking about like paying the utility bills or investing in your 401k or how stocks work, like as you're doing it, if you're using, any of the apps out there, you mentioned Robinhood earlier, if you're using an app and you're buying some crypto, let your kid watch you buy the crypto, talk about what you like about it, and just involve them early in these things that to me were a mystery until I was in college. I love some of the books out there, Ramit Sethi's I Will Teach You to Be Rich. My son, that book's written with so much testosterone. My son at 16 just gobbled it up. He thought that was great. My daughter didn't like that book at all. She liked, and just happened to be a book written by a young woman. She liked Aaron Lowry's Broke Millennial. Like she thought that Broke Millennial was fantastic. And now they're both 26 and they're doing great with money, and they read quite a bit. So I tried to get them reading about this stuff early, mostly, just to try to make it fun. I didn't try to make it be lessons. I like to play board games. I hate board games that teach you crap. I really do. I like games that just kind of spur interest so that I want to go look at it in the future. And I'll give you an example. There's a game called Power Grid that I like. Really great game, but it is the most boring topic ever. It's about building a utility company in America, or you can flip the board over and do it in Germany if you want to. But so you're buying different types of power plants. I don't learn anything about power plants. I don't learn anything about utilities, but I'll tell you this. When I started playing Power Grid, ever since then now, every time as I'm going through the news every day to figure out what we're reporting on, I always stop when I see things about new energy, right? New energy sources, new things. And I know it's because of Power Grid. Like I didn't learn anything about Power Grid, but it created this thirst. So give your kids just enough that they become thirsty on their own. Don't try to shove it down their throat. I think that's also a big key. And I think, Adam, something that's different for me as a middle-aged dude than it was for my kids is if parents were older, we learned with physical money, and we learned, hey, don't use plastic. The whole world is plastic. Your child right out of the gate is going to have to be good at plastic. So the quicker you get your child into some type of account that involves plastic and using a debit card or a credit card responsibly, I think the better off they're going to be with their wallet later on.
Yeah, especially, you got to teach them that money is real, not just using that plastic is real money. I wanted to say about your first 2 points especially, one of the things that we do with our kids is we have it set up at 70, 20, 10. They have to save 20%, donate 10%. I think that's how we do it. And they get to keep 70% of, whatever money they earn or get for their birthday. But the requirement is anything over $100 in their room has to be put in the bank account.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then, but with their $100 in their room, like you were saying, it's very much they say, hey, mom and dad, I want this. It costs $40. And we'll say, okay, well, first off, do you have $40? Yes, I have $40. Okay. Are you sure you want it? Yes, I'm sure I want it. Okay. We will go to the store, or I will buy that in 3 days. You tell me in 3 days or 2 days, I'll ask you again. If you say yes, I'll buy it. And that's kind of the buying process. So we make sure they have the money. We give them a little bit of thinking time.
Yeah.
And then we buy it. And then the second thing about talking about showing them things, I mean, we are very honest with our kids. Like I've sat down with our older two, like when Naresh was saying, we're real estate investors, and I've shown them the spreadsheet that I keep every month. I say, look, so-and-so paid their rent. I'm going to put it here. And then we paid the bank this amount of money. This is how much money we made on the property this month. Anytime they ask about our finances, we don't try to hide it. And I think that's a important thing. I don't think you should be hiding what you're doing with your money from your kids, unless it's like buying them Christmas presents, then maybe hide what you're doing. But it's been important for me to show, because I'm like you. I didn't make the decisions it sounds like you made, thankfully, but my parents didn't really show me much or do anything much with money growing up. So that's just kind of how we solved those three things you were talking about.
I'll just say, I'll share my quick story. And
with your 18-month-old?
No. Okay. So 18-month-old.
Already buying crypto at 18 months.
He might have one of those college accounts, though. Who knows?
Right.
Well, I was going to ask Joe. That was going to be one of my follow-up questions for an 18-month-old. I'll get to that. Not necessarily an 18-month-old, but maybe a 2-year-old, which is close enough. But my story is somewhat similar in that my parents. So my mom didn't work, so it was just my dad, and he was pretty much an employee his entire life. He didn't own real estate. He didn't have any spreadsheets to show us, hey, this is how you buy real estate. This is money coming in from it was just a job, right? So there was nothing exciting there. And I truthfully, I had no idea how much I knew he did well because he drove a nice car and we went to private school, like a pretty expensive private school. I knew he did well, but I legitimately had no idea. I didn't know what doing well meant. I didn't know anything about how much he made, how much he had. I still don't know. And my mom still doesn't know. And she says, look, I don't care. I didn't marry him for that. Like, I knew he was doing well. And I never asked about our finances. I don't know where the finances are. If something happened to him, like, I'd be pretty screwed. Like, I'd have to figure it out. And, which is, I mean, this is the opposite of what you said, Adam. But with that being said, I think because I'm more of a business person and it's more a part of my life, it's easier to teach the children than just going in for some job and getting a paycheck. That's one thing. But then the other thing regarding, say, an 18-month-old or a 2-year-old, you said you were a financial planner, Joe. I don't know if you did much whole life insurance. Just wanted to get your thoughts on whole life insurance, the concept of infinite banking, starting children young when it comes to that. But I'll let you finish what you were going to say to Adam's comment first.
No, yeah, that's well. The only thing I wanted to tell Adam was I like his 70-20-10. I'll tell you an approach to that, guys, that a client of mine used. This was not my idea, but I thought it was great. Was that the 10% was the charity part, right?
Yeah, I believe 10% was charity.
Yeah. So the 10% that's 10% going to charity, he actually would physically hand them the money and he would take 10% away and call it tax. And then he would and he would talk about, just because I give you money because you get a paycheck does not mean you get to keep it all. Like, he was calling it a tax. And then the cool thing was at the end of the year, every year around the holiday season, they would decide as a family what they would do with all the tax. So I thought that was a neat approach to the charitable part of that. But it's so what's funny, and I'm glad you brought up whole life insurance, because this is another one of those areas that people often make black and white that is not black and white. There's so much gray area. And what's frustrating is that there's so many insurance salespeople that use insurance the wrong way. And it's frustrating. So as an example, you bring up infinite banking. The idea of infinite banking can be phenomenal. It can be fantastic. And yeah, if you've watched, any of the YouTube videos on infinite banking, and if you haven't, go watch a few, because I think it would take us 4 hours to explain how it works. But but it works. And that's where I pause, because the next part of that phrase is until it doesn't. And what I mean by that, infinite banking works phenomenally well if you have great cash flow. But the second that you don't have great cash flow, this goes from a fantastic opportunity to the biggest pain in the ass, and something that can quickly smoke.
Well, you're betting on yourself.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's what it is. So if you're very, you talked about testosterone, Saul-Sehy's book. If you've got that testosterone and you want to bet on yourself, and you're gonna, you've learned how to get rich from Saul-Sehy, go ahead with the infinite banking. But if you think you're going to see a lot of instability and you're not confident in yourself, don't do it. And that was the advice I was given by an insurance executive.
Now, are you just talking about being able to pay the premiums?
Yeah, because those premiums coming in, the concept around insurance is that and I can tell when somebody doesn't know what they're doing with insurance when, they're in some internet forum, which these always make me want to poke my eye out. Not always, but often, because well-meaning people give bad advice because they don't know what they're talking about. Somebody will say, well, I'm putting X amount of money into my insurance, which is a big, huge number. And the person, the well-meaning person says, oh, you're getting ripped off. All that money's going to, oh my goodness, my insurance is only, 1/10 of that. Well, I know what's often happening there is this concept that works in infinite banking and any time that you're using a permanent life insurance policy, which is they work better if you stuff tons of cash into them. Because the number one thing you have to do, and this is what's hard for people to get their head around, is you have to minimize the insurance cost, right? There's this thing called a modified endowment contract, which means this is no longer, this is a tax shelter, not an insurance policy. Well, you got to ride that, what we call the MEC line, the modified endowment contract line, for this to work. So when I see somebody putting crap loads of money into an insurance policy, I actually have the opposite feeling. I'm like, you are one of the few people using this correctly, which also means two things. Any permanent insurance strategy works well if you've got crap loads of cash flow. You've already done many of the easier shelters like a Roth IRA, your 401k, the easy stuff to get to. You've already maxed out all that stuff. And you have plenty of flexible money, because it might be hard to get money out. Now, infinite banking can work really well with the right product, where they make it easy to get the money out later on. But with the wrong product, which I've also seen, and some of the unscrupulous insurance people I've seen can really hurt you. You then do that after you've got plenty of money sitting on the side that you can go to for emergencies, and then do this. And by the way, the insurance is better if you're young. So doing it when
like
you're
a 2-year-old.
Yeah, right. Doing it when you're super young and you've got tons of cash flow, can be absolutely phenomenal. And the frustrating thing for me about this whole topic is that, it takes an hour to explain it. It can be fantastic, which is why I think a lot of the gurus out there, we talked about Ramsey earlier, says always buy term insurance. It's so much easier to say buy term insurance to 5 million people, just makes it simple, because you and I both know that also for the vast majority of people out there, for probably 90% of the people listening to this, buying term insurance is probably a better idea anyway. That other 10% though, I always feel bad for, because they're getting herded in with everybody else, when this could actually be a really kick-ass strategy for the right person.
So what are your kind of top, if you had to rank the top retirement accounts, you mentioned Roth and regular IRAs, kind of if you were looking at somebody, say a W-2 employee who's listening, who's thinking about saving up their money, maybe thinking about going into, business for themselves here. If you had to rank like your retirement account, 1 through 5 or whatever, which one would you start putting money into first, and what would you put into last?
Oh, great. I think the first thing I do for retirement would be, especially if you have a match, like if you've got any place where you're getting free money,
sure.
go get the free money. So that's the easy number one draft pick here, as we're looking at fall sports, in full bloom right now, and you're doing like fantasy draft picks. My number one fantasy draft pick is take the free money, which means the 401k. Now, if you've got two different choices available, regular 401k and Roth 401k, I will generally, most of the time, once again, here we get into gray area, but if I'm talking to a wide swath of people, I go for the Roth option. Use the Roth 401k. The match is going to go into the pre-tax side of the 401k, so they'll be taxed a little different when they come out. But that gives you two sides of what we call the tax triangle. And if you think about a triangle, three different ways that money gets taxed. You got pre-tax in, and then the money gets taxed when you take it out. And there's some rules to take it out, like a 401k you have to separate from service, and IRA. Regular IRA, you get to deduct it, and then you're going to pay tax after 59 and a half. Another side, like the Roth IRA, where you don't save any money today, but you're going to get that money tax-free later on. The reason, by the way, I would take the Roth portion first is just because of math. If you look at any math around where tax rates are now versus where they've been historically versus the national debt, and without making this a political economic thing, if you just know math, we are at very low tax rates right now. And so getting taxed today when things are low to have money that will be tax-free later on, I think is a huge boon. Now, could the government change the game? Absolutely. And I've talked to people who have thought that maybe this promise that we're never going to tax it again, it might be taxed. So I think I'd lean into the Roth. So Roth 401k first, traditional 401k to get that match second, then a Roth IRA if you're eligible, and that's subject to income that changes every year. Do a Google search on the amount of money that you make and see if you're eligible. Then I think the next spot for me, the very next place that I would go, and I'm hemming and hawing between a couple different ones, and I'll tell you just what I'm thinking here. I really like flexible money that doesn't have great tax treatment. So I like money that I can get my hands on whenever. As an example, one of the upsides of real estate versus stocks is an example. Real estate is this kind of, generally speaking, over long periods of time, kind of a slow roll, right? Slow down and slow up and slow down. But the NAREIT index, the North American Real Estate Index versus the S&P 500 still gets you to almost exactly the same place where the S&P 500 gets you. So over long periods of time, real estate or stocks lead with the one that you're most comfortable with. So I like real estate in general, even though we talked earlier about real estate today could be problematic. But I also look at the fact that if you're going to go buy houses, you can't peel off the bathroom to pay your kids' college, like take part of it. You got to sell the house. That's a process. The money's not that liquid. So I also like having liquid money, just having money that if things hit the fan, and I'm not talking about emergency fund anymore. I'm talking about just, you talked about having an app and opening up an account and putting money into that account that you can get it whenever you want. If you've got, and this is where we start to get into the ifs. After that, I think if you've got great cash flow, then I think getting into some of the I would say annuities for me are probably the last place I would put money. Because they're a tax trap. I feel like people don't want to put money. Whenever I had clients that would put money into an annuity, they wouldn't want to take it out because the last money in is the first money out. And so you got to pay a bunch of tax to get your money out. Plus the products are convoluted. They're difficult. So it's funny that, you were talking earlier about permanent life insurance. I go with permanent life insurance before annuities, which I know most people would probably go the other way.
Yeah, well, I think it's important to diversify and to do it all, or try to do as much as you can. So whether that's the stocks on like the risky Robinhood account, and then the 401k Fidelity account that's safer, maybe some bonds, gold, high dividend stocks, index funds.
Yeah, can I comment on that for just a second? Because I think you're hitting the nail on the head, which is that what I see often in our community, and you may see in yours, is that people are obsessed with optimization. And I get it. I want to optimize. But because the future is uncertain, Naresh, I think that optimization, that card's often overplayed by people, well-meaning people in our community, where, to your point, diversification, being able to pull from different places, apples from different trees, is a better way to go.
Yeah. And I brought up like gold, for example, bullion, crypto. That's just on the stock side. Then we brought up the real estate. Then there's a whole life insurance. And my rule with the whole life insurance, so the industry has somewhat changed because of the pandemic. The rates, kind of like real estate, like you're not getting as good a deal on real estate right now. You're not getting as good a deal on whole life insurance because so many, I guess my guess is because so many people died in 2020. A good amount of people are dying in 2021. So the life insurance companies need to make money. So I think with whole life, you have a limited time. You can get into stocks later in life. You can get into real estate a little late. You don't want to get into real estate when you're 80 years old and taking out 30-year debt, 30-year mortgages. But with whole life, I think you should be under 35. You should be healthy, and you should put in an amount that you know that you can pay for the rest of your life annually. That's my simple rule. I think if you're above 35 or if you're not healthy, you're just not going to get as good a rate, and that money might be better put somewhere else. That's how I see it.
Totally agree. And you should be aggressive. I would only add to that. You should be, and I know you agree with this, you need to be aggressive with that number. I think you need to ask the people at the life insurance company, what's the most I can put in this, right? Because with most of these products, there's a sliding scale of how much you can put in. You don't want to minimum fund it. You want to fund about as much as they will let you fund every month. Like pick that number.
Yep, absolutely. So the key though is, and look, with the whole life, you can use that to fund your real estate. You can use it to fund, because it's like it's called infinite banking, because you're creating your own bank and you don't need to go out and get a loan from some other private lender.
And it can be super because the rate, so it's way better than a bank, way better than a bank.
It is. And like you said, we could talk about this it actually took me 4 years to forget about 4 hours. It took me 4 years to understand this fully. I went ahead and signed up because the sales presentation was so good. And I was like, I just feel like I need to get this. I was like 24 years old, 25 maybe at the time. And I was like, I just feel like I need to do it, and I'll figure out when I'm 30, how this thing actually works. So I went ahead and got an account. And then after I got married, I opened up another one, and then got my wife to open up another one, and then now I want to open one up for my son. I just love it so much because it's so cool, and it's such a good vehicle. But with that being said, Joe, we're going to wrap up the discussion. I want to end with any final thoughts that you have about modern money management. We've talked a lot about different areas, technologies, new and exciting apps, software, just anything to close a discussion on modern money management.
Yeah, I think the place that we start with in my book, I think, is also the place that the average person should start, and so few people do, which is, back to Stephen Covey, beginning with the end in mind. And timelining your goals is the key to everything. People would always run into trouble when they came into my office when I was a financial planner, and they would just say, I want more, like MOAR, right? More, just give me more. And if you don't have these definite goals in mind that you're working from, then that's when you make mistakes. That's when you chase returns. It's when you become stupid with your investment decisions. You start second guessing yourself. You don't have we talk about investment policy statements and all this cool stuff about managing your money well, but it all comes down to this timeline. And the timeline itself is really easy. It's, I need to save X amount of money times Y return to get Z goal. right? And so once I have these three numbers, I can then begin playing with them. So let's say, as an example, Adam needs $5 a month to put his kids through college. Yeah, that's grossly inaccurate for college expenses, but we'll go with $5. And he needs an 8%.
They're smart. They got scholarships.
There it is. Yes. It's probably $350. But but that leads to a discussion. $5 and an 8% return are the two numbers that we kind of start with. And then we have two discussions. Number one is, can Adam save $5? And if he can't, are there things that he needs to do in his budget to create that $5? And it's funny because people will go try to optimize their budget, but without that why, I find that, it's transitory. You save money for 3 or 4 months and then you go celebrate and buy a big screen TV, and you end up blowing a bunch of cash because there was no why behind it. On the other side, if, Adam and I are talking and we look at investments that historically have done 8% and he's not comfortable with that, like I saw all the time when I was a planner, okay, let's back that down to 6. Well, if we back that number down to 6, we got to change one of the other two numbers. He's either got to save more money or he's got to change the goal. And often when I would go, because I used to go talk to people about like their retirement plans, I go into Chrysler and IBM and Microsoft and talk to employees, and I'd ask people how they pick the amount that they're putting into their 401k. And they'd say, well, it's what I'm comfortable with. Well, do we have any idea where that's going to get you? Like if you start with where that's going to get you, maybe you're overshooting. Hopefully you're saving too much money. Maybe you're not saving enough. And then like anything, obviously the wind's going to blow, which I look at wind like taxes, inflation, and returns are going to blow differently than what you projected. So much like a pilot, and this is such an overused analogy, but a pilot corrects course with a plane, you need to continue to revise those numbers. Like, what return do I need now? How much do I need to save now? Maybe every couple of years, take a look at that and do some corrective action. But it all starts with timelining your goals. The biggest thing I found when I would draw this, like stick people on one end and a bunch of bags of money on the other with these different goals, what I found surprising was that people didn't have any idea that their goals intersected, meaning just to keep Adam on the hot seat as my guinea pig here, he wants to put his kids through college and he tells me what year he wants to retire. Turns out those are at the same damn time, but he never thought of it that way. He just goes, yeah, when I get to X age, I want to retire. Didn't realize that he's going to have 2 kids in college at that same time. So can he really do that? And looking at how these goals play against each other. If some goal, it's like Survivor. If some goal's got to be voted off the island, which goal is more important and which one's less important? So all these conversations we have, all the more technical stuff, the types of things we invest in, that all starts with this kind of badass thing of timelining it all out. And once you timeline it out, it gets way, way, way more fun.
That's Joe Saul-Sehy. He's a host of the Stacking Benjamins podcast, co-author of the book Stacked, Your Super Serious Guide to Modern Money Management. Just some awesome discussion that we've had. We don't talk a lot about personal finance here, but when we do, the interviews go long because there's just so much to talk about. The website, Joe Saul, S-A-U-L-S-E-H-Y, Joe SAULSEHY.com, also stackingbenjamins.com. Joe, any final thoughts you want to share with our listeners or anything else you'd like to promote?
It is so absolutely fun hanging out with you guys. Just talking about working for themselves, working from home, the homies, my kind of people.
Joe, thank you so much for coming on our show. To all our listeners, check out our previous episodes at workfromhomeshow.com. Hello at workfromhomeshow.com. If you have any questions or comments about this episode or anything that you'd like to get in touch with us about, follow us on social media. We're everywhere. Leave us a review on whatever podcasting platform you utilize. And until next week, keep on working from home.